I once cut a section of pipe out from under a kitchen sink, held it up, and tipped it over. A chunk of gray grease the size of my fist slid out and landed on the floor with a thud. Solid, cold, hard as a bar of soap. And the folks who lived there swore to me, hand on heart, that they never put anything bad down that drain. They believed it too. But the pipe doesn't lie. I've been doing this work for 30 years. My Uncle Ray put a pipe wrench in my hand before I was old enough to drive, and the first real thing he ever taught me had nothing to do with tools. He said, "The drain is not a garbage can." I've opened up more clogged pipes than I could count, and nearly every one of them traces back to something that went down that never should have. So today, I'm walking you through 10 things you should never pour or scrape down your kitchen drain. And I'm not just handing you a list. For everyone, I'm going to tell you exactly what it does inside that pipe. The mechanism. The reason it turns into a problem. Because once you understand the why, you never make the mistake again. Here's the part that saves you real money. A grease clog that hardens up runs you $150 to $300 for a plumber to snake it out. Let it really set in there, and you're looking at $300 to $600 for a hydrojetting job. All that just to avoid dropping something in the trash instead of the sink. And before anybody types it in the comments, no, having a garbage disposal does not get you off this list. I'll show you why as we go. Stick with me, because the one that catches people most off guard isn't grease, and it isn't even food. Let's get into it. Number 1, grease, fat, and cooking oil. This is the big one. If you remember nothing else today, remember this. Here's what fools people. It goes in as a liquid. You pour the bacon grease out of the pan, and it flows right down, warm and easy. And you think, gone. But it is not gone. It is just moving. The second that hot grease hits the cooler pipe down the line, it starts to cool. And when grease cools, it does what grease does. It turns solid. It clings to the inside of the pipe like wax runs down the side of a candle. It doesn't clog you all at once. It builds, a little on this pour, a little more on the next, and the pipe closes up on you like an artery. Then one day, a food chunk floats along, catches in that sticky layer, and there's your clog. Grease is the single leading cause of kitchen drain clogs. Number 1, hands down. Ask me how I know. I've spent whole afternoons in a kitchen digging the stuff out by hand. Now here's a caution, because folks always think they've got a clever workaround. I'll just run real hot water and melt it on through. Careful with that. 2 problems. First, boiling water can soften and warp the PVC trap under your sink, so use hot tap water, never boiling. Second, even if you melt the grease at the sink, it just cools and hardens again 10 feet down the line where you can't reach it. You didn't fix a thing, you moved the problem. So what do you do instead? Simplest thing in the world. Let the grease cool in the pan. Pour it into an old jar or a coffee can, or wipe it out with a paper towel and put it in the trash. A jar you were going to toss anyway beats a $300 service call every time. Number 2, coffee grounds. And I know they're small, they're wet, they feel like they ought to just wash away like sand. That right there is the trap. Coffee grounds do not dissolve. Water does not break them down. What they do is clump. They stick to each other, they're heavy, so they sink and they settle. And where do they settle? Right in the trap. That's the U-shaped bend of pipe under your sink, the one built to hold a little water and block the sewer gas. It's also a perfect little pocket for grounds to pile up in. Now put those grounds together with a bit of leftover grease film from number 1, and what you've got is something a lot like wet concrete sitting in the bottom of your trap. I have opened traps packed solid with a black coffee ground sludge. It does not budge on its own. Here's the fix, and it costs you nothing. Grounds go in the trash. Better yet, work them into your garden or a compost pile, because coffee grounds are actually good for the soil. Your tomatoes will thank you, and your trap will too. Between you and me, that's the kind of 2-for-1 deal I like. Number 3, eggshells. This is one people like to fight me on, especially if they've got a disposal. The disposal grinds them right up. What's the harm? Let me tell you the harm. When a disposal grinds an eggshell, it doesn't turn it into nothing. It turns it into gritty little sandy bits, fine sediment. And that grit does two ugly things. One, it settles and collects in the low spots of your pipe, same as the coffee grounds, laying down a sandy layer that builds over time. Two, there's the membrane, that thin skin on the inside of the shell. That stringy little film wraps around anything it can grab, clings to the pipe walls, and holds other debris in place like a net. So you've got grit settling on the bottom and stringy membrane snagging up everywhere else. That's a bad combination in a pipe. The fix is the same easy move. Eggshells go in the trash or the compost, not the sink. Disposal or no disposal. And that brings me to something I want to stop and say plainly in a minute, because the disposal question comes up on nearly every item on this list. Number 4, flour, and any starchy batter that goes with it. Pancake batter, the bowl you mixed biscuits in, the flour you dusted across the counter and swept toward the sink. Here's the picture most folks never stop to imagine. Flour plus water does not make a nice thin liquid that rinses away. Flour plus water makes paste. Glue. What did people hang wallpaper with for 100 years? Flour paste. When you rinse, batter down the sink, you are pouring literal glue into your pipe. And it does exactly what glue is supposed to do. It coats the walls, and then it grabs. Every crumb, every coffee ground, every bit of grease that comes drifting by gets cemented right into place. Flour is a binder. It takes the loose debris that might have washed on through and locks it all down into one solid mass. So scrape that bowl into the trash before it ever hits the water. Wipe the batter out with a paper towel. 10 seconds of scraping saves you from mixing up a fresh batch of drain cement. I'll tell you, that's a trade worth making every time. Real quick, if this is the kind of thing you want more of, tap subscribe here on The Vintage Pipefitter. Every week I walk through a real repair and the little money-saving fixes that took me years on the job to learn. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it keeps this stuff showing up for you the next time something under your sink starts acting up. Number 5, pasta and rice. The leftover spaghetti nobody finished, the pot of rice that dried out in the fridge. Down the drain it goes. And here's the thing that makes this one sneaky. Pasta and rice are dry goods. They are built to absorb water. That is the whole point of them. And they do not stop absorbing just because they're already cooked and sitting in your pipe. They keep drinking up water, and they keep swelling. A little clump of rice that slipped down easy can bloat to several times its size once it settles in there and soaks. Now it's a soft, swollen, sticky mass wedged into your line, and it is not going anywhere on its own. Add a little grease, a little of that flour paste, and you've got the whole gang working against you at once. The fix. Scrape the pot into the trash or the compost. Even a cheap colander held over the drain catches most of it. Loose noodles and rice belong anywhere but down that pipe. Number 6, stringy, fibrous vegetables. And this is the one I really want the disposal owners leaning in for, because this is where a disposal actually makes things worse instead of better. I'm talking celery, onion skins, corn husks, the stringy guts of an artichoke, a pile of potato peels, anything with long, tough fibers running all through it. Here's what those fibers do. They don't break down, they wrap. They wind around each other and braid themselves into a mat, and that mat catches hold of everything else that comes along. And if you've got a garbage disposal, it is worse. Those long strings wrap around the impeller, the spinning part down in the middle of the unit, and wind it up tight, same as hair tangles the brush roller in a vacuum. I have pulled knots of celery string and onion skin off disposal impellers that were wound so tight I needed pliers to get them free. That is a burnt-out disposal motor just waiting to happen. So fibrous vegetables go in the trash or the compost. Small amounts here and there, sure, life happens. But that pile of potato peels or corn husks after a big Sunday dinner, that's a trash can job, disposal or not. Now let me stop and say the thing I keep circling back to because it is the single most important honest point in this whole video. A garbage disposal does not change this list. Not one item on it. A lot of folks believe a disposal is some magic machine that makes anything safe to send down the sink. It is not. All a disposal does is chop big pieces into smaller pieces. That is the entire job. It does not make grease stop congealing, or grounds dissolve, or eggshell grit stop settling, or flour stop turning to paste. And in a few cases, like those fibrous strings we just talked about, it makes the problem flat out worse by jamming up the machine itself. Grease, grounds, shells, the starchy stuff, the stringy stuff, all of it still clogs your pipe whether you've got a disposal under there or you don't. So don't let that disposal talk you into lazy habits. Between you and me, the disposal is for the crumbs you couldn't quite scrape off the plate. It was never meant for the scraps you should have thrown out. All right, number 7. And here's that one I told you wasn't even food. Produce stickers. Those little oval stickers on your apples, your bananas, your bell peppers. You rinse the fruit, the sticker peels off, and it slips down the drain without you even noticing it's gone. Here's the problem. Those stickers are not paper. They're a thin plastic or vinyl made to survive shipping, cold storage, and getting wet in your fruit bowl for a week, which means they absolutely do not dissolve or break down in your pipes. Not ever. One sticker won't clog your line, I'll be honest with you, but they add up and they don't stay home. They wash on downstream and catch on things. They foul the screens down at your water treatment plant, and they gum up the low spots in your own line and your septic tank if you've got one. It's the kind of little thing nobody ever thinks about, so I'm telling you to think about it. The fix is nothing at all. Peel the sticker off, drop it in the trash. Takes half a second. Make it a habit one time, and you never think about it again. Number 8. And this one is going to surprise some of you because it's the exact thing most people reach for to fix a clog. Harsh chemical drain cleaners. The stuff in the bottle you pour down to eat through a blockage. I am telling you to keep it out of your drain, and here is why. 2 big reasons. First, what it does to your pipes. Those cleaners work by kicking off heat and a violent chemical reaction to burn through the clog. If you've got older metal pipes down there, that reaction corrodes them from the inside out and eats at the rubber seals and gaskets in your line. You can clear a clog today and start yourself a slow leak next month. And here's the real kicker. Most of the time, that chemical doesn't even clear the clog. It just melts a narrow channel straight through the middle of it. Water trickles through, you figure you won, and a week later, it's packed solid again. Only now that caustic chemical is sitting right on top of the clog, waiting for whoever opens that pipe. And that is the second reason, and this one is about your safety. So listen close. Never, ever mix these cleaners. Do not pour a chemical drain cleaner down a drain where you just used bleach. Do not mix bleach with ammonia. Do not mix one cleaner with another. Certain combinations, bleach and ammonia, or bleach and an acid-based cleaner, release a toxic gas that can put you in the hospital, or worse, right there in your own kitchen. It is not worth it, not for a clog. So how do you handle a clog without the chemicals? For most kitchen backups, a plunger or a few dollars worth of drain snake, or just pulling the trap and cleaning it out by hand, will do the whole job. But honestly, the best answer is the rest of this list. Keep this stuff out and you never have to fight the clog in the first place. Number 9, leftover paint and the rinse water that comes with it. You finish the project, you've got half a tray left and a roller to clean, and the sink is right there. Easy. Don't do it. 2 things are going on here. First, inside the pipe, paint behaves a lot like grease. It's liquid going in, then it dries and hardens right onto the pipe walls, coating them and narrowing the line, layer on top of layer if you make a habit of it. Oil-based paint is the worst offender, but even basic latex builds up over time. Second, and this is the bigger one, it's an environmental problem. Paint is loaded with chemicals and pigments that are not supposed to enter the water system. Full stop. When you rinse it down the drain, it heads straight for the water supply. And that's not something a treatment plant is set up to simply filter back out. Here's the fix. Let leftover latex paint dry right out in the can, or stir in a little cat litter to firm it up. And once it's fully solid, it can go in your household trash. Oil-based paint and any rinse water go to a hazardous waste drop-off instead. Nearly every county has a spot for it, usually free. A little planning keeps it out of your pipe and out of the water. Number 10. Expired and leftover medications. The old pill bottles crowding the back of the cabinet. The half a bottle of cough syrup nobody's touched. A lot of folks were told years ago to flush the old stuff or wash it down the sink to keep it away from the kids. The advice has changed on that, and for a good reason. Here's the mechanism, and it's a little different from a clog. This one is about the water itself. When you pour medications down the drain, the treatment plants downstream are not built to remove those drug compounds. So they pass right on through and end up in the rivers, in the groundwater, and eventually in the drinking water. We're finding traces of medication in the water supply all across the country now, and it's a real problem for people and for wildlife. So don't flush them and don't pour them down the sink. The right move is a drug take-back program. Most pharmacies have a drop box sitting right there in the store. Plenty of police stations do too. And there are take-back days a couple of times a year. It's free, it's anonymous, and it keeps that stuff out of the water for good. Between you and me, it's one of the easiest right things you'll ever do. So there's your 10. And if you step back and look at the whole list, you'll notice nearly every one of them comes down to the same simple truth my Uncle Ray hammered into me all those years ago. The drain is not a garbage can. Keep this stuff out, and you keep your pipes clear, and you keep that plumber's number tucked in the drawer where it belongs. Now, I promised you a bonus tip, and this is the one I'd stick right to your refrigerator door, because this whole video is about prevention. And there's one cheap little thing that does most of the preventing for you. Here it is. Go buy yourself a sink strainer basket. It's a little mesh or metal basket that drops right down into your drain opening, and it catches all the solid bits before they ever get into the pipe. Coffee grounds, food scraps, rice, that eggshell that slips out of your hand at the wrong moment. It stops all of it cold. When it fills up, you lift it out and knock it into the trash. That's the whole job. They cost a few dollars, $2, $3 at any hardware store in the country. And I'm telling you, that little basket is the closest thing to insurance you can buy for a kitchen drain. A $3 part standing guard between you and a $300 service call. That is the kind of math I love. And pair it with one habit. Keep an old coffee can or a jar under the sink for your grease, and wipe your greasy pans out with a paper towel before they ever touch the water. Do those two little things. Keep that basket in place, and you've handled 9 of the 10 things on this list without ever really thinking about it. Thanks for spending a little of your day with me. If it saved you a headache down the road, that's the whole reason I make these. Subscribe to The Vintage Pipefitter, and I'll see you next week with another real repair you can do yourself. 30 years of shop floor know-how, one fix at a time, so you keep a little more of your money in your pocket where it belongs.